More often than not, when I tell people about the things that I'm interested in, the word weird gets tossed around quite a bit. While I do understand that some of my interests are a bit unique, I believe that this situation in particular is a don't knock it until you try it type of situation. Whenever I tell someone that I love podcasts, they always seem to be confused. Almost no one ever actually understands what I'm talking about. So, quick show of hands, how many of y'all have never listened to a podcast before? All right, that's not too bad. Podcasts are simply so diverse and interesting that I never fail to find something that I love. Audio dramas about supernatural beings always enrapture me. Comedy podcasts keep me laughing and go a long way to cheer me up when I am down. Thousands of other categories of podcasts are able to gain huge audiences of people, all interested in the same things. With all of the different genres of podcasts available, there is bound to be a little something for everyone. Formed from the words iPod and broadcast, podcasts will teach you new things about new subjects, new things about old subjects, or simply help you fully live and enjoy your life. Perhaps my favorite of all of the genres of podcasts available are the audio dramas. Audio dramas are podcasts that are basically like TV shows, but without that visual aspect. They're scripted fiction, and they can either be very realistic or extremely imaginary. Currently, my favorite drama is called The Bright Sessions, written from the point of view of a reporter sitting in the office of a therapist named Dr. Bright. The curious thing about Dr. Bright is that she only treats what is called an atypical, a human with superhuman powers and abilities. If you're as into telepathy and mind control and time travel and all other things pertaining to the supernatural like I am, then you will definitely enjoy The Bright Sessions. Another of my all-time favorite podcasts is called Welcome to Night Vale. This one is written like a radio talk show from the perspective of radio host Cecil Baldwin. As you listen, it sounds just like a talk show that you might normally hear, but with a twist. Night Vale is a fictitious town where crazy and unusual things are happening constantly, and Cecil reports on them in real time. From black-hooded figures to hundreds of non-existent angels, all named Erica, there is no shortage of science fiction weirdness. This is one extremely intriguing podcast that I love a lot. King Falls AM is another podcast set up like a radio talk show, where hosts Sammy and Ben report on the interesting citizens and going-ons of the mountain town called King Falls. Perhaps if you're into things that lay more on the horror side rather than the simply strange side, I have a recommendation for you. From production company Pacific Northwest Stories comes two podcasts, Tanis and The Black Tapes. These both freaked me out so much that I could only listen to them during the day and in the presence of other people. They were less science fiction and a bit more horror and conspiracy theory, but they were still very, very great. Sometimes, however, the drama can get too dramatic, and this is when I can turn to comedy podcasts. Number 1 on my list for comedy podcasts is titled You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes. This was actually the very first podcast that I ever listened to, the one that began my addiction. There are over 300 episodes, and yes, I've listened to every single one. Where most audio dramas range from 15 to 30 minutes, and most comedy podcasts from 30 minutes to an hour, Pete Holmes could care less about the time. His episodes usually range closer to 2 hours, and often even up to 4 hours. These, the exceptionally long ones, are my favorite. Another great and hilarious podcast is called Doug Loves Movies. Comedian Doug Benson really enjoys movies, and his episodes are recorded in front of live audiences in comedy clubs in cities all over the country. He invites comedians and other famous people onto the podcast to play fun movie trivia games in order to win prizes. The episodes are even funnier the less that the guests actually know about movies. These are usually about 50 minutes to an hour and a half long, and for whatever reason, I prefer to listen to these as I'm falling asleep. If you know about author, TV host, and YouTube extraordinaire Grace Helbig, then you might enjoy her podcast, Not Too Deep, with Grace Helbig. where Pete Holmes likes to get into people's darkest, dirtiest, deepest secrets. Grace Helbig is all about barely scraping the surface. Silly questions posed to other comedians and famous people are great for quick laughs and an hour of hilariousness. If neither comedy nor drama interest you, then there are tons of other podcast genres that you can enjoy. Sports, I know, are a huge interest for most people. You like football? There's podcasts for that. Basketball? There's podcasts for that. Wrestling? There's podcasts for that. And there are multiple different kinds of podcasts for just about every other sport that you could even imagine. ESPN alone produces 10 of the top 30 podcasts under sports and recreation. If you enjoy learning new skills or hobbies, have a new language you would like to master, are interested in meditation, or would like to learn how to build self-confidence and decrease anxiety, then educational podcasts might just be the thing for you. There are hundreds of pods that will teach you how to speak Spanish, French, Italian, Russian, and just about any other language that you are interested in. If you're already fluent in a non-English language, then you can choose to listen to podcasts that are already fully recorded in the language that you speak. Simply taking a quick scroll through the Education Top 100 led me to podcasts that will teach you how to train your dog, give you tips on how to weld, teach you all about the history of Japan, and tell you exactly how to bring out your best inner salesman. I don't know much about government, nor do I really care to at this point, but if I did, I could download a podcast that will give me a rundown of everything important about our current economic situation in just under 30 minutes. I introduced my dad to podcasts because he spends all of his time in his car listening to political talk radio, and he once complained about not being able to listen to Rush Limbaugh from the couch. However, there are tons of podcasts that will catch you up on all of the juicy gossip from our world leaders. Hillary Clinton, for example, actually has a new podcast called With Her. And for those with police or military backgrounds, or for those interested in going into these fields, there are podcasts that are all about what it means to be a proud protector of our freedom. Interviews with ex-Marines or current K-9 officers can be of a great interest to many different types of people. With more than 200,000 podcasts available in more than 100 different languages, people with all types of interests are able to find a podcast that they love. My personal favorite, audio dramas provide the same emotional connection that TV shows do, allowing for listeners to grow attached to characters while giving them the creative freedom to imagine situations as they feel is best. Comedic podcasts are lighthearted and funny, providing hours and hours of hilarious stories. All different types of podcasts are available for those wishing to delve deeper into their own specific and personal interests or looking to learn about something new. In the words of podcast host Marco Arment, podcasts started out as a niche interest almost a decade ago and have been growing slowly and steadily since. Everyone has a niche interest, and there is a podcast for every single one.